Hello everyone and welcome to another TMM review edition when we are reviewing a bit of the tournaments and of the winners in the weekend or in the past weekend. Today we have Ultraman who simply just came back as the king of Fight Night after taking a break. 1 week after he won it, he came back, he won it again. How are you feeling, Ultra?
I'm feeling great. Thank you for asking. Yeah, just thought I would give some time for other people to shine and then come back. Um,
Don't you feel a bit like a monster with this? Like you give them time, like they think they have a chance, they can win, and then you come back.
no. I actually gave them a full fight night to have fun while I wasn't there. So I'm not a monster. I'm the good guy here. Trust me, I'm a good guy. I think. I'm not sure. Actually, I'm pretty much an asshole. But all right. What was the question already?
No, I don't think you are a bad guy because you didn't bring any Fizz TF. As you guys can see already on the screen, there is no Fizz TF in Ultraman's lineup. Winning a fight night with Fizz TF, winning a tournament with Fizz TF. I don't know, that is an anomaly usually. Let's stop a bit on your decks. And why Draven Jinx? Why old aggro?
Well, I was forced into Driven Jinx because I cannot bring double SI. If I could bring double SI, it would have been Ellie's Burn and Azure Burn, because those are performing better against Fizz TF and performing maybe slightly worse against Fiora Shen. But yeah, like the goal was more to counter Fizz TF. And Fiora Shen basically always has the same scenario because they don't have much healing. So it's always about just dealing damage into the first 3 turns. If they don't find Fiora, if they don't find Refuge, they're dead. If they find Refuge but no Fiora, the game's gonna drag on forever and you might kill them with your burst. If they find both, you are a dead man no matter what's happened. You have no way to outplay that, and we all accept that when we decide to play aggro decks.
Yeah, and did you expect any unfavorable matchup for your Draven Jinx into the tournament scene? Like, I suppose that if you would have hit any Lissandra Trundle, or if you hit any Lissandra Trundle, the games would have been slightly harder than usual.
Mhm. Yeah, obviously, I was just not expecting to face at any point a lineup that would have 2 bad matchups, because I was not expecting to see in the tournament ever something similar to Fiora Shen plus Trundle Lissandra, because it's been proven that those decks cannot counter efficiently Aphelios or Fizz TF. So bringing those decks is just accepting to insta lose against the how to say that, the meta lineup, right? The lineup that anybody could bring. They could just bring Aphelios Zoe, Shadow Isles, and bring Fizz TF. And what do? You cannot bring a lineup that insta loses to that lineup. It's just too rough. Like, you're never sure what people can bring, but at any point people can bring the best deck. They are more likely to bring in the best decks. So taking decks in lineups that you know have no chances to beat that seemed a bit tricky. I was not expecting anybody to go down that crazy road. I was more expecting to see Fizz TF either in a meta setup, so Fizz TF plus Aphelios, or Fizz TF plus Fiora Shen because it's very stable, or Fizz TF plus Lissandra Trundle because it's very stable. People they kind of like to do that. It gives the lineup something along the line of non-binary. So obviously not speaking about gender here, but speaking about just the way the matchup works. They don't want to bring in something that just gets odd counters by something. So they're trying to take less risk, and taking the most killed and most efficient decks alongside something very stable at which they're capable makes a lot of sense in those setup. We discussed that last time too. It's what I would call the comfort zone for most people. Is you bring something stable and that you're good at, and something meta game that you know is really good and that you're good at, and let's go. Let's roll, baby. You're sure to kind of have control over what's happening, um, as long as everybody plays the same game as you.
But
If everybody,
correct me
sorry,
if I'm wrong, but Draven Jinx is not really stable by any means.
yeah. I mean, that's the thing, is that if somebody does not play the same game as you do, you might get surprised. And as I was expecting everybody to be stable, and as I was expecting everybody to try and play that game, because uh, it's something we're really used to see in tournaments. Like, people, they love to just measure against each other and like, okay, I'm the most skilled, I'm gonna win. They were not expecting the cheap trick to bring aggro. So yeah, flying under the radar again, because the decks are tier 2 and the decks are not great on ladder, especially in master ladder. And people tend to underestimate those decks, especially when you look at the matchup sheet. The matchup sheet is not that bad. When a deck has a positive win rate against Fizz TF and Aphelios Bilgewater, that deck has to be good in the meta game. You just has to use it at the right time. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely, and this is the magic of the tournaments, because you can think, as you said, about lineups that include not tier 1 decks but tier 2 decks that generally on ladder would get obliterated, but in a tournament setup where your opponent even needs to think about 2 decks, not 3 and 1 ban, when they do need to think about 2 decks that are piled up together, and if they beat them or not, things get slightly harder. You can go for a counter. I think we can call your strategy a glass cannon nonetheless, because you bring 2 aggro decks and whatever happens, happens.
I mean, people tend to also have that, what I would call I have no idea to say that in English. Damn. So some form of pressure. Like they just think that aggro is unreliable. It is not actually true. If you have the right amount of cards everywhere, it is as reliable as Lysandra Trundle. It's crazy to think that people actually think Lysandra Trundle combo version is more reliable than aggro is. Guys, spoiler alert. The fact that you have in your hand Lysandra plus Trundle plus Fading Memories plus Matron in order to activate the Watcher is way more unlikely than the fact that an aggro has a turn 1 playing 9 turn 1s in his deck and unmulliganing for them. Sorry, I had to burst that bubble. So, yeah, actually, the same goes for Fiorashin. Fiorashin is a very stable deck, etc., etc. But the chances that he has, let's say, Fiora into Shen is way more unlikely than the chances that an aggro has, let's say, 3 turn 1 in his hand. The aggro does not need a specific combo in order to win some matchups. Most of the good matchups of aggro, they just need to have their early game snowballing into whatever win condition they have. So for Azir Burn, it's just you have your early game and you have Prankster or Azir or Blind Caretaker. Let's go. We have a win con. For Draven Jinx, it's just having Saboteur or Urchin, and you have Spider, Battlecaster into Crowd's Favorite, or it works with Draven too, and some Discard Fuel or whatever, and you can roll them. If you have Vision, you can roll them too. It just takes a bit longer. There is so many scenarios in aggro in which you win the game, maybe in a less flashy fashion, then people seem to really underestimate the fact that for aggro, eye rolling is not high roll, it's mid rolling.
Yeah.
For most of the matchups in aggro, for most of your good matchups, to win them, you only need to mid roll as aggro. Obviously, if you very low roll, you lose. But again, if you very low roll with Trundle Lysandra, you lose. If you very low roll with Fiorashen, you lose. If you very low roll with about any deck in this meta game, you lose. Because the decks are so good at what they're doing. They're so tempo, they're so fast. They don't allow you to come back. I mean, if you let even let's take Civil Blank, which is not in my mind a good deck because it has so many weaknesses, especially against aggro players and against control archetypes altogether. Well, even if you let that deck and attend it for 3 turns, prepare yourself to lose. That's an example of a mediocre deck in this metagame, but still, if you let him for 3 turns, you are gonna lose every single time. So even the mediocre deck have such a high tempo and such a way to protect the card and their advantage and the snowball potential in this metagame, then yeah, they're just gonna crush you if you left them unattended for 3 turns. So yeah, I feel like the decks are so good at snowballing that if you can just interrupt that snowballing effect, um, you can win most of your games.
And while we transition to the next deck that you have been playing into Fight Night, I think what you're trying to say, like the past decks that we have been mentioning, Lissandra, Trundle, Fiorashen, they all look for free drops, but they look for specifics. For example, in Fiorashen, you do not want any free drop, you just want Fiora. On 4, you don't want any 4 drop, you want Shen. Same for Lissandra. On 3, you want Lissandra Trundle, you want Lissandra. On 5, you want Trundle, you want for everything to go according to plan. But in aggro, you are looking for more variables. For example, you do not want a specific 1 drop, you just want another 1 drop, 2, 3, so on and so forth. And because you played, you built your deck like that, it's more likely to happen.
Yeah, exactly. If I'm playing Azure Burn at the moment and I have, let's say, Dune Keeper, I'm gonna aggress turn 1 and I'm gonna deal 4 damage. I'm gonna be very happy. But if I have Bark Beast, I'm gonna deal only 1 damage, but I'm gonna be happy if I have a Cursed Keeper, if I have anything to activate it. If I have a Blight Caretaker, it's gonna become a 3/3, and that's gonna be good. It's gonna be good enough. I don't need I don't need only the Dune Keeper because it's the best one. If I have the Bark Beast, it's okay. Even if I have a Stygian on Looker and I have to play the Stygian like that on turn 1, it only deals 2 damage. Against a good matchup, it's gonna be enough. Obviously, against Lissandra Trundle, if I don't have something good, it's gonna be way harder. Against Fiorash, and it might be harder if I don't have a good opening. But what it means is kind of the opposite of what people get. It means that your good matchup, you're still winning while mid-rolling, and your bad matchup, you still win them when you high roll. People see that as you high rolling every single game, when actually you win the good matchups with a mid roll, you win the hard matchup with a high roll. So no game is lost on side when you're playing aggro. That's honestly the opposite of what people see in those decks. The reason they say it this way is mainly because they feel helpless. That's yeah. I really feel like it's kind of a given for people. They tend to say those decks are less stable because they themselves have less impact on the game, and thus they feel like it's less stable because they have less impact. But actually, in terms of statistic, they're more stable.
Yeah.
And I think this Azir deck just proved it. I saw so many versions with Predict. I was like, are you kidding me? You have 9 turn 1s. Why? And so much draw. Why would you ever add Predict to that? Why would you ever need Predict in that deck? The deck rolls every single time the same. Like I think I've been playing like what 40 games of that. Every single game is the same. You have a turn 1, you have a turn 2. If not a turn 2, you have 2 turn 1s or whatever. You have you pass and you have Stalking Shadows and you have your turn 2 later on. On turn 3, you drop Prankster, you drop a Caretaker, you drop a Nazir, and yeah, you have the same gameplay and the same game plan every single time, and the deck just rolls out pretty well.
What I would like to ask you about this deck, because have you been trying previously with, let's say, a similar Azir Burn variant? Maybe I threw in an Elise there as well, but I wanted to go for a 5 routing instead of the Phantom Prankster, and I wanted to go for the 5 mana 2/4. It's not Island Navigator. What is it called?
The Caretaker.
Yeah.
It's also a Caretaker, but what's his name?
Doesn't matter. People know what we're talking about.
Yeah, the Drain one.
The Neverglade Collector. We got
Collector. It. Yeah, it's Caretaker in French, actually.
So why Prankster instead of Collector? Is one of my curiosities.
You win games on turn 5. What would you want to start playing on turn 5? That's all right. I know that's a dumb way to answer that question, but literally, it's what happens. You win games on turn 5. On turn 5, you're trying to finish a game. You had, let's say, you're eye rolling this game, all right? So you had Den Keeper, Curse Keeper, a Blight Caretaker. You're dropping a Nazi on turn 4, and on turn 5, you're dropping a Prankster and 2 Stygian. You just won the game on turn 5. Why would you need to have Neverglade Collector not be able to drop those 2 Stygian in order to heal yourself? For what damage? Who did you any damage at that point? What deck can out aggro that?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. But what I would like to go our attentions to is the spells, because I think it's pretty important to understand what the spells do in this deck. For example, why is Fading Memories here? Why is one copy of Onto Dusk here?
You want as much direct damage as you can have. I remember, I think I was coaching on that deck like yesterday. We had a game where we only dealt 6 damage in the 3 first turn. All right, and the opponent was Targon, so he had healing, he had Aphelios setup, he had everything. We finally won that game. We did as much damage as we could one turn with the Blight Caretaker, just taking the defenders out of the way, and we did as much damage as we can. And even with all the heal in Targon, and all the heal, I mean Star Shaping plus 3 Guiding Touch plus 2 Golden Sisters, we had enough direct damage to kill him. Stalking Shadows is duplicating Doom Beast, which means that you have double damage. The Phantom Prankster is amazing at that too, because one Phantom Prankster in the early game, it's some damage and it takes a lot of time to activate. But in the late game, if you just happen to have 3 mana, you play a Fading Memories, you play a Phantom Prankster, and your opponent has to have a 3 damage AoE, which they don't. They don't have 3 damage AoE. They need to play 2 cards to do that. And if they play 2 cards, most of the time they're gonna kill some of your unit first. You might answer with a Glimpse Beyond. They just use 6 mana, so you might just at least 6 mana. Most of the time they're gonna use 7 to 8 mana, which means that you can just drop in another board. The AoEs, they hit their own units too, so you can just drop another board if they do that, and they don't have mana anymore. Yeah, and you have the possibility with Renus Path, obviously, that's direct damage, that's all it does, but it's drawing a card. So the idea is just to keep cycling, and in the games that you were not able to close on that famous turn 5 because you weren't high rolling, because you were mid rolling to low rolling, well, you keep just cycling, surviving, and you deal 2 damage every turn, 4 damage every turn. And if your opponent is not playing a region that has access to healing or sheep healing, they're gonna fall behind. Like they need to kill the Doom Beast, and they need to heal themselves at the same time, every single turn. You're not getting out steamed until what? Turn 7, turn 8? So before that, they still need to handle the board and their HP. After that, they need to handle their HP. But yeah, some decks don't have the healing, or some decks won't have healing anymore.
One last card that I want to direct our attention to is Ruinous Path, because I think if you have the option to play a draw card, like only for the draw effect, this card is already good, but if you also get the drain effect, that's even better because it's damage on your opponent. But how do you feel about this card in this particular deck?
I mean, the card is awesome. In this deck, in the setup of aggression, this card is a Mystic Shot that draws and heal yourself. In the setup of an aggro phase deck, this is a Mystic Shot that heals yourself and draw a card. It's awesome. It's awesome. Obviously, it's less flexible. All right, no problem. I can accept that. But that just means that you have to adapt your game plan to the way you want to use it. It's most of the time not going to be a dead card. You can just trade your cards and force your opponent to trade, or you have the Glimpse Beyond. You have the Blight Caretaker, you have the Ravenous Butcher, so your opponent is not able to answer those. It's up to you, though, to use them right. If you have Ruinous Path and you feel like the Ruinous Path is too often non-activated or similar, let me tell you, it's on you, guys. It's not the card that is not good. It's not the number of cards that is too high in the deck. It's you did not do a good enough job at anticipating the course of the game in order to activate it and find a way to activate it at the right time.
Yeah, I don't think it can be put better, and I think this card can be activated most of the time because your opponent has bigger issues that they need to deal with. You have a board that, if it is left unchecked, as you mentioned, 2 damage or 4 damage, snowballing every single turn is going to eventually kill them. So Ruinous Path, in their eyes, I don't think it's as much of a problem, but for you as the aggro deck that is able to also deal damage and draw, it is a big thing.
Yeah, especially because those aggro decks, they always had the same problem. It's that they tend to lose some steam and some pressure as the turn goes by, and they have too much mana to use. A card that cycles and uses mana is obviously not a good card on turn 3, but it's an amazing card on turn 5, turn 6, because you just want to do that. You just want to keep cycling and keep dealing damage, especially if you don't have to confront your opponent board, because your opponent board is going to get bigger and bigger minions able to check your cards, trundles, bulkier minions that just are going to be able to block. So if you can deal damage, not getting through that board, well, you're pretty happy. You just, all right, let's deal damage, and I draw, and I deal damage, and I draw, and there you go.
Yeah, and this lineup has been piloted for you with great success, but I do want you to tell us about the matchups that didn't feel that great with the lineup that you have brought, or if you have any game in particular that you do want to mention.
I had a game against Furashen that was playing 2 Refuge that ended up badly because I didn't have Glimpse Beyond, though. If I remember well, he was not respecting a Glimpse Beyond. So actually, that game, I could have won it just if I had a Glimpse Beyond. I mean, he was not respecting it, not as he did a misplay, just I just remember that he was not able to answer it. I don't know if he had to or if he had no way of doing otherwise. So yeah, if the Furashen is playing multiple refuges, it's raising the chances that Furashen's beats the deck. I was more expecting Furashen to just run 1-0 refuge because they want to run Aegis now in order to counter Trundle. They don't really want to play that many refuges. But this was a Furashen that was tagged for Fizz TF, I think. So yeah, he was playing refuges and it was a bit harder. Obviously, Trent Alessandra. So the lineup I was hoping not to face is Trent Alessandra into Furashen. If that was the lineup I was facing, I would have had a rough time. But I have to say, in the region lock format, there is way less decks that are good against aggression. Aphelios is not that great against aggression in general. Furashen, as we said, and as I said in the post-games interview, etc., is close to a 50-50. If they take in Refuge, obviously it's going to get higher and higher for them, but most of the time it's not that bad of a matchup. Trundle Sandra is a bad matchup, but yeah, as they cannot get two control side decks, they most of the time don't have two good matchups into those decks, into those aggressive decks.
And Aggro is not forgiving no matter the region combinations.
You can make aggro with a lot of variability and flexibility in the regions. That's true.
And we're going ever closer to the end of this interview, and before we are actually closing, I would like you to tell us if there is anyone that is supporting you. Of course, TLG is always there for you, but who else helped you prepare, maybe supporting you along the lines besides TLG?
No one. For those that don't know, I don't actually scream a whole lot, and I would have at all. So I play things in ladder. I have a reflection about anything. If I have any question, I ask my teammates, and that's it. Most of the time, I don't have any question, and we just tend to discuss metagame, which gives me a lot of insight about matchups and similar. That's it. That's literally it. I don't do anything else. Practice a bit the game in order not to play too badly. Although my pure level of play at the moment is not good because I don't play enough. Um, yeah, it's just a question of vision, and that vision you get it by just thinking. Think, guys.
Yeah, it might help out as well. Uh, I mean, I know that you are an apostle of playing a lot of ladder, and I kind of understand it because you face a lot of random piles of everything. So if you want to understand more opponents, because that's what's happening, I think we talked about this as well. If you are playing against a scrim partner, at some point you get into your habits, they get into your habits, and nothing good comes of it because you know your play patterns. But if you're playing ladder consistently, I think you have more variety and more various ways people play the decks.
I think in an ideal world, you should do both. It just takes a lot of time, and at the moment, being a professional player, 100%, only focusing on your results is not the way to go if you want to live from Runeterra. You need to be flexible. You need to be a bit YouTuber, a bit streamer. You need to be a bit tourney player and write articles, do coaching. I mean, you have to multitask a lot if you want to live from Runeterra. If in the future we have esports circuit that permits to people to focus entirely on their own performance and their own level, they should do both, and they should do both while discussing the game also on a regular basis. They could have training sessions or whatever, and it would make players like you have no idea that can exist actually. It would make great play-by-play players that also have a bit of vision. We don't have that yet on the game, so watch out for the as in every single card games, the good players are yet to come, guys. Some will adapt, but the good players are yet to come, and they come when we have an esports circuit and when they can be professional. The more training you have, the better you be.
The good players will eventually come. We are going to end on that note. Thank you, Ultraman, for all the insight, for the information outside of the tournament performance in Cell, or a reflection a bit on the game as well. Thank you for being here with us. Congratulations again, and we're hoping to see an awesome performance from you next week as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, see you next time.